Hey, what's up? Thanks so much for clicking on this video. So today what we're going to talk about, very hot topic, something I emailed about a lot, is how do we go from Meta, Facebook or Instagram over to YouTube? I got 5 different things I want to talk about on here, and I want to give you the confidence to at least give this a try and know exactly what you're doing rather than just guessing, because most people I talk about are just putting their Facebook ads over on YouTube, trying it out, and they're like, it doesn't work. And I'm going to explain why that happens. So let's get right into it. The first thing is the core challenge of why Meta doesn't work with YouTube. Let's talk about this, right? When you're over on Meta, there's a couple things that happens. One, Facebook and Instagram know so much about us because we're often doom scrolling on there. Their pixels are everywhere. There's all kinds of data. They know what kind of things we're interested in. They know what ads we've clicked on before. And they parlay that into super targeting powers for their advertising clients like you. So if you're trying to sell, I don't know, a dog training course and you have a great ad, they click on your ad, you get them, you don't convert them. The next time that person is on Meta property, be it Instagram or Facebook, they see a ton of dog training ads. It's just the nature of how the Meta algorithm works. They're really great at this. Good for some advertisers, not great if you're a really awesome copywriter that produces great creative and wants to generate sales. Now, the second thing that happens over on Meta that doesn't necessarily happen on YouTube is there's a lot more context to your ad when someone sees it. So when they see your ad, they see the video or the image that you've got on the screen, then above it is some text and below it is a headline and a button. And you can do some of the heavy lifting in that text that's above and below it, that copy, versus having to force the video ad to do all the work. What does that mean for you as an advertiser trying to go over to Google? Couple things. You don't have that context over on Google. When you have an in-stream ad that's running, a pre-roll ad that people often skip, the ones you're familiar with, there's no text to go along with that. The video has to take over all that heavy lifting of calling out, bringing up the pain point, the quick hook, getting people's attention before they click skip, right? So the straight up porting of a Facebook or an Instagram ad over to a YouTube channel, uploading it, put it on YouTube and demand gen campaign, see if it works. Maybe, but more times than not, they flop. And that's as far as people go. They just go, meh, and they give up. They don't go any further on this. You see, what tends to make YouTube users different than Meta users is what I mentioned earlier. We've got the doom scroll thing that people are doing over on the more social channels like TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. They're using it as a time killer, a time waster. They don't want to deal with something, or they're just monotonously looking for a dopamine hit, right? On YouTube, I'm not saying people don't go there just to fulfill whatever, quick gratification of trying to find something that's exciting. But more times than not, there is a larger purpose for why people are over on YouTube. Maybe it's they're looking for a review of a product, a tech product, makeup, clothes, a car, whatever. So that's, there's a purpose. They've gone to use it like a search engine. Maybe they're subscribed to a particular channel and they're going to catch up on the newest episodes or videos that someone's uploaded. Maybe they're looking for a song or a music video or something like that, or they're learning to do something, a DIY. So there's a bigger purpose drive to why they're on YouTube. So you need to make sure that first hook and call out gets them so that they are willing not to go do the thing they've come to YouTube to do. On Meta, we don't have that same thing. Like I say, you still need the pattern interrupt, but we almost need to be more sensational over on Facebook. And what I've seen happen sometimes is ads that run compliantly on Facebook end up getting hit for different policy violations over on Google. Don't get that confused with account shutdowns. I'm not talking about account bans and things like this, but just videos that won't get approved for sometimes exaggerated or inaccurate claims, improper content usage, or some things like that, okay? So with that out of the way, talking about the differences and what we need to keep in mind, let's hop into the first tactical thing that you can do, which is how are we going to port our creative from Meta over to YouTube? So when we're talking about creative translation, that's what I'm calling this. What works and what doesn't? Well, there's a very simple question you need to ask yourself about any of your Meta ads before you port them over to YouTube. If you just saw that video ad in and of itself, does it hold attention? Can it sell on its own? Does it call out your target audience? Does it introduce a hook quickly? Does it make a call to action for them to click or do something? If it does that on its own and without any copy above it or below it or a need for a button that says something down below, then you may have an ad that can be translated from Meta directly over to YouTube, okay? That's the first thing. Now, before you move it right over, there's a couple things I want to mention here. I recommend that advertisers use a landscape, which is a 16 by 9, right? The rectangle version of an ad, as well as a vertical rectangle portrait ad. You should have both of those. People tend to use more square and portrait footage over on Meta. I would recommend getting a landscape version of that done. Even if it means like doing something unique in Canva to take your portrait video and put it in a frame or something so it's a landscape format. But I'd recommend having both of those, okay? So back to that point, does your video hold attention? If it holds attention, good for you. You're probably in a place where you can test that ad right out of the gate. If it doesn't, then what does the copy say above that video and below it that makes the ad work? There's probably some form of call out or attention grabber or hook introduction that you're going to need to add into your video that you're using over on Meta to get it to work on Facebook, or pardon me, to get it to work on YouTube. What do I mean by this? Well, let's say that maybe you're using a spokesperson or one of these AI avatar things, or maybe you're using an 11 Labs voiceover and some stock footage on top. You're going to want to get that same actor or the avatar in whatever tool you're using, or create the voiceover again in 11 Labs to basically say the copy or a version of the copy that you were using over on Meta. Now, if you're one of these people that writes really long copy on Meta, don't reverberate everything or regurgitate everything that's there. That's not needed. But if you're calling out a certain person, age, demographic, geographic, problem point, and then introducing a hook, at least get that in front of your video. So that way, when someone sees it right away in feed or pardon me, in stream as a skippable in-stream ad over on YouTube, they'll know who it's for, who it's not for, what the pain point is, what the hook is, and what they can expect. That's your best chance of getting the watch, the view, so they don't click skip. A great way to watch this sort of metric after you're testing your ads is inside Google, there's a metric called engagement rate. People overlook this. I don't know why. It's a golden metric in my opinion. The engagement rate, so an engagement triggers when someone watches 10 seconds of your ad or clicks on it, right? Clicks your call to action. That if you're getting a high engagement rate, you're getting a low skip rate, which means your ad is resonating with people. So that's a good thing. Is it resonating because it's a great ad or because it's misleading or because it's too sensational? I can't answer that. But getting a high engagement rate is step one, right? Getting a good click-through rate and a low cost per click, which is going to convert on your site, are all subset things of getting a high engagement rate. That's why I use engagement as my first metric to determine if my ad is resonating with the people I'm showing it to. So after engagement rate, you've got also what's called a view rate. Now, people get these confused. A view is a 30-second view or watching the whole ad all the way through if it's a short or an in-stream video. So your engagements are generally view rate is generally a subset of engagement. So you might have a 40% engagement rate, but a 25% view rate. What does that tell you? Well, that tells you you're getting 45% of the people to watch the first 10 seconds or more, but then between 10 seconds and 30 seconds, you're losing a bunch of them. These metrics all start to paint a picture. You're like, what should I change? Some people are just blind. They're like, oh, we'll just write 100 new ads, which I'll be honest, used to be me. If you go back and watch some interviews I've done on podcasts or things, or even some of my older videos I talked about, I had a award as a badge of honor that I just wrote hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ads, which I still write tons of ads, but way more of my time now is spent looking at these metrics and saying, okay, my engagement rate is low. What am I saying? What's the visual? How can I improve that? Or I'm getting a big drop off between that 10-second engagement rate and my view rate. And right around my view is when my call to action is. So can I either move my call to action up closer to where my 10 or 15 second mark is, or at least the first call to action? Or what can I do between those two timestamps, the 10-second engagement rate and the 30-second view, to try and improve my chances of getting someone to be sticky? These metrics tell a story. And I'll be honest, the same metrics exist on Meta and TikTok. I'm actually working on this now, trying to analyze it to create the same framework. But looking at these metrics is your first step to determine how your ads are doing over on YouTube, okay? So takeaways here. Does your ad stand alone? If yes, you could test it. If it doesn't, what do you need to put up in front of it in the first 5 seconds to make a call out, to make it compelling for someone not to skip? Look at the engagement rate, look at the view rate to try and determine if people are engaging with it. That's what to do with your creative. Obviously, we go down a big hole there in terms of how do we do the creative? What kind of things should we look at? How do we make videos? Where do we make voiceovers? What do we do for call to action? All this stuff. Way too in-depth for this particular video. You know, I've got something coming called the Demand Gen Switch, which is kind of like a Meta to Demand Gen or YouTube to Demand Gen course that's coming. If you're interested in that, click the link in the description of this video, sign up for my Demand Gen Primer, and you'll get a notification when that's all done, okay? Okay, let's move to number 3. After the creative translation, we're looking at targeting translating. How do we translate our targeting over on Meta over to YouTube? Now, best case scenario, you have a very ubiquitous, a very broad offer that can run to most people. Maybe you need to narrow by age. So I call those demographic, well, not call them, they are demographic factors, the age, the gender, then we get the geography of where they're at and these types of things. If you've got an offer that you're running really broad over on Meta, let's say you're selling like, I don't know, we do a lot of life insurance lead gen, which is pretty open, right? We don't know who does and doesn't, but like half of most countries, adults don't have life insurance. So we're kind of safe to target broad. Then we just narrow by age. We'll target, 35 to 55 for the younger demographic, then 55 plus for the sort of more older final expense type product. And then we can tailor our ads to these two markets. If you're in a market like that and you're running just all the ages or pretty wide ages, maybe just Advantage Plus targeting over on Meta, then you can test broad first over on YouTube. That's going to be your best bet. Just narrow by ages. One difference you'll find over on YouTube versus Meta is instead of just dragging a slider and selecting any age you want, it's 10-year age brackets over on Google. You've got 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 64, and so on. So you can't just exclude, if you can't exclude people that are just under 40, you'd have to exclude everybody that's under 44, right? If that makes sense, based on how the targeting of demographic data works. So if you're not just totally broad, totally ubiquitous offer, what I'm going to recommend you look at first is what's working over on Meta. Generally, you want to look at the demographic things like gender and age, maybe geography of where you're seeing your best results, where your lowest cost results come from. And also, are you using any specialized interests or anything like that and targeting over on Meta? If you are, what is it? You don't have the exact same capability, over on Google and YouTube demand gen campaigns, but we can try and mimic that as best as possible. So if you're in a niche area, the first thing to look at over on Google will be one, since everything's now demand gen, it's not actually a YouTube conversion campaign anymore. We have the choice of running lookalike audiences, which is brilliant. So if you've got a list of customer data, leads, sales, customers, whatever, and it's big enough, not like 100 people, you need thousands of people, you can upload that, create a match list inside Google, and you can build a lookalike audience of that. So you can start there. It's going to be a pretty good targeting area. We need to start somewhere that we know could work for us. Now, that doesn't mean you're stuck to just that lookalike audience or just that list of customers, because there's lots of options to expand your targeting. They call it optimized targeting in Google. Again, topic for another ad, but you can turn on optimized targeting in a campaign that's working, and then it uses the audiences you're targeting as sort of like a seed audience, they call it, and then they try and grow your reach from there, okay? Now, if you're targeting very specific tight interests over on Meta, what you're going to want to do over on Google is this. Step one, go in to set up a new campaign, and you can look up all these different, what I call stock audiences that exist, okay? So we've got in-market audiences. These are based on keyword search history and things like this of the last 30 days or so. So you've got people that are in market for financial products, houses, real estate, cars, pets, jobs, travel, all kinds of stuff, right? Salons, different products that you might be looking for, from vacuum cleaners to technology to new cell phones, all kinds of stuff like that. Then we have what's called affinity data, which is more like in market is what they're doing. Affinity is who they are, right? So, like vegetarians is an affinity audience you can target. That's who they are. A vegetarian might also be shopping for a new iPhone or Android device, right? But fundamentally, after they're done shopping for that Android device, they're probably still a vegetarian, right? Or if you're into constantly looking at political news or business news online, that's part of the regular everyday things you do and who you are. That generally isn't going to go away based on an in-market thing you have. So when you're thinking about who you're targeting, the types of interests you may be targeting over on Meta, to overlay those over on YouTube, we need to look at it a couple different ways. One, like I just said, looking through the stock audiences that are available, affinity and in-market data. Does any of it line up? You can test those. Two, what's called custom segments. So there's two ways to build custom segment audiences on Google. And all this stuff is going to be, I know, a little bit overwhelming. So again, not a pitch, actually a helpful tip here. Click the link in the description under this and you grab my demand gen primer course. That's free. It walks you through how we're doing demand gen right now, but you'll also get notified when my demand gen switch course is done, which will walk through all this stuff I'm talking about now with all the different audience stuff and acronyms and things like this. Okay, back to the thing we're talking about here. Custom segments. Two ways to build them. One, you can input a list of keywords into the audience builder inside Google, and you can say, give me people that have recently searched for these words, right? Doesn't mean they searched them yesterday or today, but at some point they've actively searched. That's good, because if you're in a real niche area, that's going to give you data that will help you show your ads to the right people, because they've searched something like what you're doing or have a solution for or product that serves in the recent past. 2, you can use keywords to define sort of an affinity type interest audience, right? So maybe someone who loves dogs, or someone who runs marathons, or someone who plays the violin, or someone who is trying to lower their cholesterol or something like that, right? So that's 2 ways you can use words to type in and create a grouping of words that says something about a person, either what they're doing or who they are. Another way you can do this is by entering URLs of certain websites. Now, everybody immediately goes to thinking, oh, I'm just going to enter my competitors' URLs and I'm going to retarget them. That's not how it works. This is about building a profile of who the person is, not what they're looking for. If you want to target what they're looking for, the only way we can really do that is within an in-market audience like we mentioned, or creating a custom segment of words that we type in of what people have recently searched, or your own data. People have landed on your website or viewed your videos. You have access to that too. So beyond that, when we talk about URLs, we want to use this as an affinity tool. Who are they, right? So let's take this for an example. If I'm trying to lower my cholesterol, let's say, right? Which I actually am trying to do because my doctor says it's important. Well, we might be looking at different articles on WebMD or the Mayo Clinic website, or maybe different supplements or exercise regimens and things like this. Things specific that someone in my situation who's trying to lower their cholesterol would be looking up. What type of things would I be looking at? What type of Instagram pages? What type of YouTube videos? What type of blog posts? What type of websites? What type of content or maybe apps would I be using? That's another thing we can do. So you can build out a very robust profile of who these people are. And then you can test a couple different angles on this. This is a great way to test if you're niche, okay? I went off on a big tangent there because that's not the only way you want to do that. But if you're niche, it's a great way to do it. Back to my point. If you can run a broad offer, so you can run it to all kinds of people, start there. Because a machine learning algorithm like Google, like Meta, like TikTok, they want lots of data. They need lots of data to process it. They're data hungry to find your best results. So that's a lot of information, but that's how to translate your targeting. So remember, we've got, look at what's working over in Meta. What ages, what genders, what geographies, start there. If your offer's really broad, just run broad over on YouTube. Don't start trying to get niche-y with your audiences. Just run it to all of the people in the specific age segments that work. If you're really niche, look at one of these audience types I'm talking about. The stock audiences are in-market and affinity that you can look at. Or you want to look at creating custom audiences like I just rambled on about with keywords, URLs, apps, things like this, okay? That's how to translate. So step 1, you need to get your ad translated over. Step 2, you need to get your targeting translated over, okay? Step 3 is our funnel and landing page. Now, can you just use the same landing page you use on Meta over on YouTube? Maybe, right? I've seen it work. I've seen it not work. Here is the thing. Oftentimes, we can use a much simpler lander on YouTube than we do on Meta because our video can do a lot of heavy lifting before people take action. There's a couple reasons for this. 1, 80% of people use Meta with the volume off, which means they may see your video, but they may only see captions. Gosh, I hope you're using captions. If you're not, do. And they don't really read and get the same processing of the video ad that you've got. They may click more curiosity-wise. Maybe they convert, maybe they don't. On YouTube, 80% of the people or more are watching with volume on, right? So they hear your ad. Your audio hooks them. They watch the ad. The visual and the hearing of the voiceover or the actor speaking has a far more impactful, I'm going to, don't mean to say it, more of an impact, we'll say, on the person who is watching the ad, okay? So keep that in mind. When you are looking at your landing page, start with the exact same landing page, but look at what your conversion rate, right? And use raw clicks out of YouTube, not all clicks, just like your actual ad clicks. So not people who clicked on comments and stuff, but button clicks or link clicks. And then divide your conversions by that. And then do the same thing over on YouTube. Look at your raw clicks and your conversions and see how they compare. And then if you see a big difference, maybe you see it go up. But if you see it go down, consider split testing your landing page. This is after you find your winning ad, but I've seen people be able to use a lot simpler pages over on Demand Gen and YouTube than they use over on Meta and get similar results because the ad does more of the heavy lifting. This is the third stage, not a first stage. So just make sure your lander works, get your Google tag on it, do all that stuff. But keep that in mind on how you're going to translate your landing page from Meta over to Google. Also, you want to make sure, just as a sidebar here, you've got all your conversion tracking, everything set up properly, because just like Meta, if you're not feeding your conversions back into YouTube and demand gen, the same thing's going to happen that you find on any other platform. They'll self-implode because it doesn't think the campaign's working because it's not getting any conversions registering back. All right, so the fourth thing we want to talk about now in translating from Meta over to Google is our campaign structure, how we're building our campaigns and how many campaigns we run. Many Meta accounts that I look at tend to be running either one of two things, either a ton of micro campaigns, like $50 a day, $60 a day, or one giant campaign at like $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 a day. Over on Google, I have a preference, and I'm going to share with you my preference because I think it's the best because it's mine. And obviously, why would I keep doing it if I thought there was a better one out there? I like to run more medium-sized campaigns rather than one gargantuan campaign. And here's why. If you run one really big campaign, then you're a one-legged stool. And this is my whole theory on all this stuff. This is why I'm even talking to you about going from Meta to YouTube. If you're just running Meta ads, then you're relying on Meta for everything. That's dangerous, right? I've been there. I used to rely solely on organic traffic out of Google for like a decade for the business that I used to have. And then in 2012, when Google brought out their Penguin update, it was called, it literally erased my lead flow and sales flow overnight, which sucked. And I've vowed never to do that again. So if you're just running Meta, that's hopefully why you're watching this video, because you want to create two legs on your chair or your stool. Same thing over here on inside your Google account. It's kind of like keep narrowing that down. Don't have just one campaign. Let's do 3 to 5 smaller campaigns. So how much do you want to spend a day? Let's say you want to spend $2,500 a day. Don't go to $2,500 a day in one campaign. Think about how you could do that, $300, $600, or $700 a day campaigns, or maybe $500 a day campaigns. And let's talk about how I would break those up. So at the onset, don't build a whole bunch of campaigns because you're just trying to figure out what works. So you're going to run your base campaign, trying to find your converting ad and audience targeting and lander and all that good stuff. That's step one. Once you found a winning ad lander combination, now we're going to branch out. Let's try some different audiences. If you've been running broad, let's try a lookalike audience. If you've been running lookalike, then maybe let's go ahead and try running an in-market or an affinity stock audience, or maybe we create a custom segment. But let's get 4 or 5 different types of targeting running that are all working well in unison and reducing the overlap you've got between these different audiences. The other thing to keep in mind is there is not unlimited amounts of spend you can force into the market when we're advertising. Depending on the geographical area you're advertising and how broad you are in terms of age and gender and how broad your offer is, which means you don't have to get really niche, is going to allow you to spend more money. If you're only selling products to people who run marathons with their golden retrievers, there's a lot of golden retriever owners and a lot of them are runners, but it's not like 65% of the adult population, right? So you want to figure out the bigger your audience, the more money you can spend, the more audiences you can have, right? Sidebar to that, but that's an important thing to keep in mind. So look at your account structure being 3 to 5 medium-sized campaigns to get to your overall spend for the day or the month or the week, whatever you're trying to target. My favorites are, I like broad because most of my offers are broad. I like doing retargeting to video views. So I connect my YouTube channel to my Google account. I go in and I create an audience of people who have watched my videos in the last 7 days, 14, 30, 60, and 90 days. I test all those different audiences out to see which subset of those works best. Sometimes I even run the exact same ad to them again because a view, remember, means they watched 30 seconds plus of the video. Maybe they watched the whole thing, maybe they didn't. Maybe they just need to see the exact same ad again. So show it again. There's this theory that people need to see a piece of creative or advertising from you 4 to 5 times before they act. It might even be more than that, actually. I'm thinking about this off the cuff. So taking that into consideration, you probably need to show that person the same ad more than once. So that can work very well. Just a video view audience running the exact same ad you're running broad. I like the new lookalike options that Demand Gen gives. I also have found a handful of affinity audiences that work for each one of my offers. And those are good because they're built by Google. They're already in there and they work pretty good. Custom segments with URLs, apps, keywords, all this stuff, they take a lot more patience. But if you've got the aggressive patience to take 10 audiences that fail to find the one that works, it can be so rewarding because these could be the lowest cost of results for your entire business. So that's how I would set up your account structure. Go for 3 to 5 medium-sized campaigns, not just one big gargantuan campaign, and you will find more stability and more success for the long term. Okay, so one thing I want to point out here, this is kind of like my point number 6 to this video, is that if you need to have ongoing creative discovery. This is sort of the anti-panic button to make sure that you as a YouTube demand gen advertiser and any advertiser anywhere don't find yourself in utter chaos and panic. What do I mean by this? Well, when things are riding high and we're winning, we tend to want to just like ride that wave, but that is the time that you need to be investing maybe 20 to 25% of your time in looking for the next ad that's going to win. You see, the audiences you're targeting, they generally will not change. If you can target a certain custom segment, your video viewer targeting a lookalike, a list of leads, and maybe broad, and those 4 audiences work for you, they'll generally always work. But the same ad isn't always going to perform for those people because you run out of people, right? You just run out of people that have seen your ad that are willing to take action. So you need to be working on that next winning creative in the background with what I suggest is 1/5 to 1/4 of your time, so that when this one starts to die, you've got the next one coming right up behind it to take its place. Otherwise, you go like this. You go high period, really great cost, lots of profit, to stress. And you don't want to be trying to find your winning ad with your back against the wall. I've been there so many times. Horrible experience, just horrible experience. You don't want to do that. So invest time in creative discovery, looking for the new ads. How do you do that? A couple different ways. One, look at the engagement rate again and the view rate on the ads that are doing well and see if there's anything that falls off. Are they performing, are certain ads performing well in spite of crappy metrics, in spite of a low CTR, in spite of a low engagement rate? If yes, how can you spice that ad up? And look at the first 15 to 30 seconds of the ad. This is actually exactly how I do it. Let's say you have a 1-minute ad, 60 seconds. Go from the first 30 seconds and see, okay, what could you change in there? Because if let's say you've got a 20% view rate. Well, that means that 20% of the impressions of that ad have seen up to that 30-second point, but they haven't seen the rest of it, right? And then the rest of people haven't seen any of it, right? They haven't seen even 10 seconds. Well, maybe they've seen 10 seconds because they fall into the engagement section, but you get my point. So that's the first thing. So if you can change the first 10 to 30 seconds of your ad, maybe you change the script slightly, you change the visuals, you change the spokesperson, you change the voiceover, you change something about it, and it looks like then it's a new ad. Maybe you've got a new hook and a new call out. Maybe you take the same ad and you just do it with a different actor. Or maybe you take the ad and you do it with a different voiceover. You take it from a male to a female voiceover or vice versa. Maybe you get someone to do a UGC style out of it, like maybe not as a TikTok style, but more like a smartphone selfie video. That type of ad could replace your current winning one as the new control when this one dies. But you've got to be investing in that upfront before this one dies. That's how you create the perpetual flywheel of successful and profitable advertising at high ROAS. If you're not doing this, then it's a one-hit wonder, right? Don't fall for that trap. And that creative flywheel concept goes for every advertising platform, Meta, TikTok, Google, native, wherever you're at. So that's it. That's a whole lot. And I talked a lot there in however long this is going to be when it's done. But hopefully you took some notes. Maybe watch it again. That's a very, very, very in-depth analysis on how to go from Meta to YouTube, probably better than a lot of courses that you'll find, because I don't know that anyone does this stuff the same way that I do, or at least that I've come across. So implement some of these things, follow the steps. Down below, I'll put the description of the steps I'll put the steps in the description. And like I've said a couple times through the video, if you've watched this all the way through, thank you. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please do like this video. It obviously, as every other YouTuber says, it helps push my content to more people. But also you'll get notified when I come out with more videos, which I'm trying to do once a week right now. And if you liked this content and you'd like to be notified when I release my Demand Gen Switch program, just click the link in the description down below, sign up for my Demand Gen Primer, which is a free Loom video, screen capture video I did, which walks you through some more specific strategy, tactical stuff in the Google dashboard for Demand Gen on how we're doing it. And you'll get an email when I'm going to launch my Demand Gen Switch program. Be of an affordable program when it's done. I did this a couple of years ago for YouTube, Facebook to YouTube. Now I'm doing it again to Demand Gen because we've got some slight nuances we need to change for Demand Gen. But that will be your complete toolbox, A to Z, on what you need to do to create successful Demand Gen campaigns from pretty much any other platform over to Demand Gen. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Any questions, post them in the comments below. I do reply to them all, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.